Do you think I support Jim Crow laws?
Look,
the fact that you can't even answer that honestly,
it doesn't matter
what. Say that 800 civilians were killed by Hamas. You said, well, maybe 400 were killed by Israel.
No,
I don't know the number. Maybe
no, I didn't say that.
You said 400.
No, I didn't.
You co-signed the opinion.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Oh, well, wait. How many? What do you? I think the word was some. That's what I heard.
No.
Well, you weren't listening.
How many people do you think approximately, if you had to ballpark it, how many do you think were killed by Hamas on October 7th?
I think it's pretty clear that the majority of civilians that were killed,
51%. Or 90%.
Don't ask me to put a number.
I just want to ballpark.
Something
Those are two very different intuitions.
First of all, when you say Hamas, do you mean Palestinians or do you mean Hamas specifically? I mean the invading
Palestinian force. I don't like to say Palestinians because I don't think all Palestinian civilians were involved.
No.
In attacks. I'll say Hamas, Islamic Jihad, whatever.
But that's how this discussion started. You said Hamas, and I began to answer that, and then Benny Morris said actually he means Hamas in addition to Jihad and the others. So
of the invading Palestinian force, how many do you think killed civilians versus the IDF? What do you think of the ballpark, the percentage?
Well, the figures we have are that about a third of the casualties on October 7th were military.
That's
and about two-thirds were. What's your question?
How many? What percentage of civilians do you think were killed by the invading force?
I think a clear majority, but I can't give you a specific figure.
If you thought it was closer to 51% or 99% were killed by...
Why would he know that? How would he know
because
that?
it's interesting to actually stake out a position.
Yeah, it's interesting.
If you want to be totally agnostic on it, that's fine.
Based on complete ignorance, because we don't know, Professor Morris doesn't know, Mouin Rabbani doesn't know.
And yet you can speak with absolute certainty that the IDF is targeting and murdering Palestinian children intentionally. Do you see the double standard?
No, I don't. You see?
I know you don't. It was a rhetorical question. Obviously you don't.
You know why? Because
you're uneducated on the matter.
I looked at the UN report. I looked at
the Goldstone report?
No, the UN report on the Great March of Return in 2018. And they said that the snipers were targeting children, medics, journalists, and disabled people.
Just as they are now in this conflict.
Exactly.
No, more journalists have been killed in the last several months in Gaza than in any other conflict.
And then in all of World War II.
Do you acknowledge that
Hamas is not killing journalists in the Gaza Strip.
Do you agree that they operate in civilian uniforms, that their goal is to induce that confusion? That that's the way that they conduct themselves militarily?
Let me finish my point. More journalists have been more
children.
He doesn't want to hear it. So
no, because it's virtue signaling. You're not having a material, a substantial. It is virtue signaling.
Yeah.
Yes, like when you say children over and over again. That's virtue signaling.
You know, you have
about how many Israelis were killed. That's not virtue signaling, because that's human life.
I don't care about it. I don't care if 100 are killed or 1,000.
You just interrogated 51%,
I'm curious who you're assigning the question. Yes,
and then
that's not the number. That's the responsibility norm.
And then Mouin mentions that more journalists were killed in Gaza than in all of World War II.
That doesn't further any part of the
more
conversation.
Medics were killed.
No, that's silly.
And then he says it's virtue signaling.
In the area.
But when Israelis get killed, that's serious.
I never said it's serious on both sides.
I'm not
virtue signaling. I'm asking a substantive question of who do you assign blame to, or do you play into Norm Finkelstein's conspiracies that the ambulances should have known immediately who was dead, that the numbers were changed because they were fake, or that maybe 51% of the people were killed by Hamas and Islamic Jihad, but 49% were killed by IDF helicopters.
You asked me a direct question, and you got a direct answer.
I didn't. I got majority, which could be anywhere from 51 to 99.
A clear majority.
What percent is a clear majority? As opposed
to always
majority?
They live in
ambiguity.
A
clear majority, in my view, is well over 50%. Please don't ask me to be more precise, because
you could say 80, 90, 95%.
I don't. If I knew that, I would say it.
I think it's reasonable. It's a reasonable.
Perhaps it is, but
You're not the best person to be asking that question. You know, I read when you described Operation Defensive Shield. And you said a few dozen homes were destroyed.
You're talking about what happened in Jenin refugee camp.
And you said...
No, the Arabs said 500. You guys said 500 Palestinians were killed in Jenin.
I never said
that. But that was the statement of the PLO, the Palestinian Authority.
You said a few dozen
and that there were massacres there.
There were a few dozen homes.
Yes, a few dozen homes.
Yeah. Well, it turned out 140 buildings were destroyed. 5,000 people were left homeless.
How many were killed?
5,000.
How many
You described it. No, I'm talking about homes destroyed. So you're not the best person to be criticizing what Mouin says when he says clear majority, but he can't say more. You know why he can't say more?
He doesn't.
He doesn't know.
Yeah, I understand that.
I hope as a historian.
If I was trying to belittle, I would give you a very different answer. I would just say, I don't know. I do know that some were shot.
You know what the right phrase there would be? The overwhelming majority were killed by Arab gunmen. And very small number were killed by Israelis by accident or whatever.
You're not
That's probably true.
Now.
That's probably true.
That maybe I can state with confidence a clear majority. Overwhelming majority, you may be correct, but I can't state that with certainty. I think there's a very easy way to find out is to have an independent.
Forget independent.
Exactly. Well, of course you forget independent.
Forget that doesn't mean anything.
Forget the law.
Independent is UN High Commission
forget independent
not
human rights.
Not necessarily.
Just repeat
They're
the numbers.
all
just
from
repeat
barbaric countries.
You know,
a Syrian was the head of the UN Commission for Human Rights.
But if it was an Israeli, it would have been okay.
He certainly would have been more honest than a Syrian.
Of course. Oh yeah, from your perspective.